Finance Committee also had an opportunity to review the expenditures, the most notable being our audit for $8,500. We paid that in September. Questions there? I got to see Tom Slender for his report later.
Do we have a motion to approve the Ron? Second? Third? Any discussion? All in favor? All right, so the next will be another recurring theme of reassigning solar projects to different entities. So these two are the projects in the town of Martinsburg. One's down on the corner of Route 12 on Glendale Road, and one's on the corner of Route 26 and Flat Rock Road.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. So I'm having a heck of a time hearing you this morning. It must be something with my computer audio, but I'm hearing bits and pieces of this. I think it's my turn to talk.
Yeah.
So yeah, Joe, so you're right. So these projects, both in Martinsburg, the Flat Rock and the Glendale Road, we received correspondence from company counsel that the company just wanted to use a different entity name. This is an internal thing for each of the projects. So you recall that these were each, the applicant was Solitude Solar. So now instead of Solitude Solar LLC, they want to use for the Flat Rock project, Flat Rock Solar Fund LLC. And for the Glendale Road project, they want to use Mapletop Solar LLC. Both these LLCs have been formed. They provide us the information, the backup materials to attest to that. So from our standpoint, because this is just, it's an internal kind of rejiggering of the organization, another public hearing isn't necessary. New approvals aren't necessary. It's just we want to make sure we have something on the record saying that the IDA is aware of this and has kind of blessed that new name. So the only thing that's going to change is the company documents, which we'll draft, will have these new entity names when they're signed. And that's pretty much it. It's kind of an annoyance. It's something inherent to these solar deals that there's constantly name changes, whether they do it internally like this or they sell the ownership interest after the fact. Kind of drives us crazy as lawyers, but from our standpoint, once these resolutions are adopted, we're done and the projects can move forward and we can get these closed. Happy to answer any questions.
Is this does this need to be a roll call or is it?
Yeah, I would do that, Joe. Yes.
Okay. All right, so we'll start with the Glendale project. We have a motion to approve the Ron second. Herb, any discussion? All right, roll call. Tom. Aye. Ron. Aye. Mackenzie. Herb. Aye. Darlene. Joe. Yes. Goggin, excuse. All right. Moving on to the Flat Rock project. Same thing. Do we have a motion for Flat Rock reassignment? Darlene, second. Mackenzie, any discussion? Tom? Yes. Ron? Aye. Mackenzie? Herb? Aye. Darlene? Joe? Yes. Goggin, excuse. All right.
Okay, thanks very much. I talked with Cheyenne and Brittany yesterday, and we're going to work hard to get these deals closed by the end of the year. There's been a little slowdown from the other side in terms of comments on the documents, but we'll push forward and we should be able to close these by the end of the year.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, take care, everyone.
All right. Economic Development Reserve Fund liquidation.
We talked about this at the finance committee, but I think Joe maybe was the only one who's around when this happened, if you even were. 2016, the county gave the IDA $700,000 and then another $400,000 in 2017 with the intent of establishing the Commerce Park that we work towards. And at a certain point, was it 2016, 17, we pivoted, bought the Climax building, and then subsequently sold that. But we've been spending off of this fund for these 4 or 5 years. And we have about $66,000 left in that fund. And basically we've been using it for economic development related, usually property related expenses. So what I presented to the finance committee, usually once a year, we take it to the county and say, this is what we spent this year off of this fund, is that we liquidate it. We use the remaining amount for the Lionsdale property flip that we did, and just close those agreements out with the county, and just get that money into our general fund, and that way we don't have to keep reporting on it year after year, and still work towards the same goals, but liquidate that fund and just transfer it to our unrestricted fund. We've done a little bit each year, more so when we were working on the business park, but 24,000 into 2020. This would just be kind of wrapping it up.
So again, it would essentially be reimbursing our accounts for what we spent on the Lionsdale property.
The finance committee motion to recommend this.
Any questions? So, Evan, do we, I mean, this is just an internal thing, right? But we don't need anything. I mean, we need a motion, but we don't need any. Just a motion. All right, so do we have a motion? Second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Lions Falls Mill Site marketing.
All right, and I don't know if you guys gave an update on Lions Falls at the past board meeting. And if so, I apologize if it's redundant, but just a little background on the mill site and where we're at. Back in the last winter, we created an ad hoc committee through the LCDC board. We brought together small business owners, community members of the Lions Falls area to really nail down what are the next steps of the mill site. It had been 2 years of just, the site is just kind of sitting there, no activity really happening. So we brought together this committee, nailed down some, small obtainable action items to achieve within 2021, one being beautification of the property. And I don't know if we showed any photos from the site.
We haven't at this board. No.
Okay, so we'll send out some photos from the mill site, but one of the action items was beautification and to just clean up the site. There was a lot of shrubs, there was debris piles. It just really looked terrible. And our thought is if we're gonna start to market the site, we need to make it look nice. And it looks amazing. There's an old canal wall that runs through that site, and the contractors clean that up. You can see the river from the parking lot. It's just a really beautiful view, and the shrubs and trees and piles are all cleaned up. So we feel comfortable enough that we can start marketing that site. Another action item was for this coming winter to start actually marketing that site, and how we were going to do that was still kind of to be determined. Everyone saw the success of our process with the Lionsdale property and utilizing a consultant to help us with that. So it was discussed at the finance committee that we continue to use a consultant to start that process to market the site, and that the IDA would contribute to the project and fund that marketing portion of the project. So I believe the Finance Committee recommends that we go ahead with this. And we are, we're thinking that it won't be as much as 20,000, but we just are gonna put a cap on it that will fund up to 20,000 for marketing services. Any questions on that? In the mill site, in the process, where we're at?
Haven't been down there, it's worth taking a look.
It's definitely,
Yeah,
basically, we discussed this a bit in the Finance Committee, and I guess, at least my personal opinion was is that Camoin did a pretty good job for us at Lionsdale, so why not give them a try at Lance Hall? So,
and they've already been heavily involved in that project through the BOA process, which is the Brownfield Opportunity Area process. So they've been involved in some of the market analysis of that site, so determining what types of uses would work there. So they're very familiar with the site, and this would just be the next steps to actually start marketing that site towards those.
20,000 is like pennies when you consider the 5+ million that was
Yeah.
getting rid of it.
In terms of the value of working with with Camoin on this, is it the type of situation where they're actually providing you with some sort of tool set to take some of the work they do and apply it to maybe smaller, I mean, or is it just we give them everything, they do it, they give it back? Is there a mentorship opportunity with pay?
Yeah, absolutely. We learned a lot from the Lionsdale process, and I think we'll continue to learn from them throughout this process. It's just a matter of they're doing a lot of the behind the scenes dirty work of putting together the RFP and doing some of the graphics. And we obviously help to, put that information out. But they also have connections that we don't have. They have connections all over the Northeast, really. So
There's
there's,
different scales of projects, so I think that's what I
Yeah.
was asking, is like, is there that opportunity?
Use that process for smaller businesses.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you see that.
yeah. And actually, we are setting up a meeting with the planning department to go through a list of all available properties throughout the county. So there's a lot of like municipally owned properties that, some of the towns and villages need some help marketing. They might be good for a solar developer, or it might be good for an actual, business. So we can certainly use that same process, and that's what we intend to do, is to use that same process for some of these smaller sites.
Any other questions? All right, so take a motion to approve up to 20,000 to be put towards this effort with. All right, Tom. Motion, Ron, second. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, final item for approval, with Herb joining us, and we're just looking at committee assignments and appointing him to the governance committee to fill the seat that Jerry held. Any questions? Darlene, second. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Executive Director's report.
Right, thank you. First thing, I want to congratulate Cheyenne again on her 20 under 40 nomination with NNY Business. She's very deserving of this recognition and very humble, and would never think that she would deserve this recognition, but she does. So congratulations. Congrats to Darlene on your election to Town of Denmark Council. So Darlene will be our new representative with the town. I'm very excited for that. And congrats to Ron, you're still legislator.
Somebody told me.
Perfect.
It was a struggle.
Yeah, it was a close race. It was a close race. Just I want to provide some updates on some programs that we have recently invested in over the past year. In regard to the childcare, the in-home childcare boot camp program that's run through JCC, I received an update from them yesterday. They're finishing out that first pilot program, and they are expected to have 8 new in-home daycare facilities between Jefferson and Lewis counties, 4 being from Lewis County. And that is roughly about 50 new spots, 50 new childcare spots in the region. And if you think about it, that's like building a new childcare, like coming up with a new childcare facility without having the cost of building a brand new childcare facility. So everyone sees that as a really big win. And they are ready to start marketing the next round of that program, which will be starting in January. And the county is fully funding that program through the American Rescue Plan Act funds. So all the stimulus funding that the county received, the second round of that program will be funded by both Jefferson and Lewis counties. And just to put it in perspective, over the past 3 years, there's been only 3 new registered in-home daycare providers created in Lewis County. So the fact that we created 4 in a couple of months is a really cool success story. So we'll be putting out a press release on that in the next couple of weeks to help market towards the next program. So,
Can we put their names on it? So we can-
right, and a list
They will
of,
fill up the
yeah,
form.
yeah. a list of these, opportunities. And then the DBA Lewis County program, so our entrepreneurship program that we haven't yet launched, already has 15 people enrolled in the program. And a handful of those are still kind of in the business plan stage, and a handful of those we have helped with marketing services, bookkeeping, strategic planning, logo creation. So these are some of the technical services that we're helping to subsidize. So I think good feedback so far.
Definitely.
Yeah.
A little scared to launch it just with the influx, but I think we're prepared now that we've had a 15 go through the initial stages. So a layer of practice underneath.
Yeah. And this is a program that we, it's good that we took it slow to make sure that we work out the kinks, and we're still going to learn and as we go, and Jenna will learn a lot. And so it's a great thing. And going back to what Chris had mentioned earlier, we have how many pilots ready to sign? About 7. So Cheyenne's been, pushing the attorneys to make sure we get these signed. So like you said, we're hopeful that they will all be signed by the end of the year, which means we can then invoice for IDA fees and get those closed out.
And number 3 wins should be within the next couple weeks. I want signed, so
Is that the biggest one?
number 3 win, it's, and that IDA fee is split up over 5 payments to us, but the first one's $387,000.
Is it the same payment?
No, after that, there are 200 of them.
Just for awareness, these fees it's on a percentage of the project. And it's designed to cover the administrative costs over the length of the pilot, which, these pilots usually range 20, 25 years. So, I mean, we receive the funds up front, but it's really, the idea is that it's helping with our, have the administration to continue to administer them over the life of the
Any other questions for me? Thanks. And just under correspondence, we received this, it's another just conflict waiver from Barclay Damon. Again, we use Barclay Damon to help us with our policies and make sure that we are compliant with all the state regulations, but they also represent solar companies as well. So it seems like they are representing Dimension Energy LLC, who is looking to develop in Lewis County. So it's just a conflict waiver stating, you know, they're working for us, but they're also working for Dimension Energy. So I had signed that and sent that back to them.
This isn't uncommon, especially with the larger firms, and, you know, it's usually a different attorney within the organization, but the same organization.
Yep.
Anything we haven't discussed?
Well, we've discussed quite a bit of what we went over, but I'd just like to say that Cheyenne makes my job pretty easy. We reviewed the loan report. We have a request that the substation that's at Lionsdale be given or whatever to the purchaser of the property. We discussed that at length and sort of thought that we should bring it to the board. We also discussed the community project, which has been mentioned. That is finally, after 3+ years, actually looks like it's going to happen. So pretty happy with that one. I'm not sure how you want to handle this Lionsdale substation thing, but I think it's worthy of board discussions.
And do we want to just
Yeah, we
flip-flop
can
that
jump
and
down.
move into
Mhm.
discussion items?
Yeah, so when we received the Lansdale property from Re-Energy, when we exited their pilot a couple years ago, there was a lot of discussion about the substation. There's an easement on Twin Rivers property to a substation that was owned by Re-Energy. And there was a lot of discussion about whether the IDA would take that, whether it was really an asset or if it's a liability. And we've had some solar developers put some due diligence into looking at that substation to determine if it was suitable for their needs. It does need a bunch of investment, which we pretty much expected, given that National Grid did not want that substation. It's a pretty good indicator that it's probably more of a liability than an asset. But it does have the potential to take on about 22 megawatts worth of energy production and put it onto the grid. Anything below probably 5 megawatts doesn't really make a lot of sense to get it up and running. But I butcher his last name, so I'm going to say Rez, who bought our Lionsdale property, the commercial property, is interested in the substation. And we've explained to him, you know, the amount of solar that you could fit on your property isn't going to be enough really to get this thing up and running. But he is interested in it. He's written us a letter expressing his interest, and we have the ability to ask Re-Energy to assign our right to that substation, because that's where we landed. We have a right to take on that substation at any point we want. But we also have the right to say, hey, you can give it to him. And that's basically what we're asking, or what Rez is asking us to do, is assign that right to him.
might say that the solar company that I work with did some looking into this, and it's, Cheyenne just said, pretty much figured that it was kind of useless because there's not enough potential for megawatts to really make this thing work well. So it's kind of a question of property, I think you could say.
Any questions on this? So we've never actually owned it. We just have basically a right of first refusal on the.
What's the physical size of that?
It's not very
About
big.
the size of this room,
Yeah.
the fenced in area.
Yeah. May not be quite as big as the whole room.
Mhm.
It's pretty small, but it yet capable of doing quite a bit if you got it up and running, but it appears to have sort of substantial problems because it's been, what, 4 or 5 years since it's operated. So it's a setback. So just outdated then. Sort of. I mean, I think it would cost a lot of money to make it work. Plus,
Does anyone know how much it would cost to get up and running?
I feel like Blue Wave Solar, when they were looking at that, I mean, well over $1 million of investment to get it up and running.
And they had the former company that was making it for re-energy come in and look at it, and the retired National Grid guy was there at the same time with us. And so I'm confident that they got a good number.
Says they're looking to acquire 50 acres of land nearby, not,
Well, he has the 46 that we gave him. Yeah, I think there's potential for land in that area. Blue Wave is the developer who was looking to develop solar. There are a couple parcels of land that are mostly wooded. I think there'd have to be a lot of clearing done, but could potentially.
but that's his intent is to,
Yeah, he would. I think he would want to build some solar arrays and use that as another revenue stream.
You know, again, this was a 40-some acre parcel that was the former re-energy property that he now owns. And, you know, the scope of the meat processing business won't take that entire footprint. But there's the logistical side is that the rest, what the footprint that's there that could go into solar probably doesn't justify the upgrades needed to the station. But if neighboring land was acquired and added to the footprint, then possibly. But that's really, I mean, we don't have anything to do with that at this point. I mean, we sold the property.
yeah, about 2 years ago, the guy that I worked with spent quite a bit of time doing a study on it, and basically, there's nowhere near enough property there that's handed to you with this substation work. I mean, you need, I mean, he came up with like 80 acres that you need to make the substation work. So it's, he gave up on it, and so did I, so.
Yeah, I'm not entirely convinced that it's going to be a walk in the park with the getting the easement transferred from Twin Rivers to begin with. Even if we were to take it over, I think Twin Rivers would want some updates to the language in there. So I don't think it's going to be a walk in the park anyway. I think it becomes a matter of whether we see potential for a revenue stream or whether we see it kind of as a liability that if somebody else wants. So,
I mean, originally, when we had no idea what this parcel might be reused for, there was, you know, the language was there to give us the flexibility to, as we marketed the property, to say that this is a potential add-on to the property. But now that we know what the property is going to be used for, it kind of limits what the usefulness is beyond the owners that, you know, of the properties around there.
Spreads wanted to work through the IDA, why doesn't it just approach?
We have basically a right of first refusal.
We get out of the way of it.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
just need to basically, we need to relay the message to Re-Energy that we're okay with this.
Gotcha, okay.
Any other questions? Do we want to vote on?
Mhm. Yeah.
I'll go ahead and make a motion.
Tom
that
makes a
we,
motion that we
Go ahead and do this.
go ahead with giving the green light for McRez to enter into conversations with Re-Energy. Second by group, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
This report is getting skinnier and skinnier. Everybody knew that Arbor paid off their loan prior to her joining our board. So that leaves us with Osceola Ski Center's USDA loan and the SKU combined Arbor USDA loan. And since this report, this was quarter 3, so it was 9/30/21. Since then, SKU got current. So everyone is current. And we have now about 77,000 and 72,000 in the two funds respectively. So we're able to give 6 loans at a full $25,000 if we get some interest in that. We are working to start marketing and getting people aware of those funds. Same deal with the IDA owned and financed property and equipment. As of middle of October, everyone is current. And same for the leases as well. Obviously, SKU had that fire, and there's some things we need to talk about that later. But really clean report on the loans right now.
Any questions there?
This next item was snuck onto the agenda, put it on there about 9:30 last night. So, the Lions Falls Mill, this final beautification curb appeal project that was completed, was done utilizing some SAM grant funding that the village obtained. So this has been mostly LCDC village with some IDA help getting the different grants, just depending on whose name we needed to put things under. The last agreement between the 3 entities was in 2018, and the last $200,000 of expected need and funding at that point was assigned to the LCDC, and they didn't know where they were going to come up with that money at that time. They just knew that that was the budget to complete the project. About a year and a half after this agreement, the village was able to secure $200,000 in SAM grant funding. SAM is state and municipalities.
Yeah.
That's what it stands for. It's just a grant fund that only a municipality could apply for. So the village applied for it, was awarded it. The money has now been, or the project has been completed. There's $113,000 that RPCI, the contractor, needs to be paid. And there was never a subsequent agreement that stated who was going to upfront that money so that the SAM grant could then reimburse it. The LCDC has informally asked us, the IDA, if they would front that money. And the SAM money is flowing now. There was a time during COVID that the money wasn't flowing. But the SAM money is flowing now. So we would expect that to be a pretty quick turnaround. If the work is complete, we've got a check. And hopefully it would be just a couple months rather than years or whatever. But I guess our ask is that maybe we have some discussion around it, but then also that we give the IDA a motion that allows us to enter an MOU with the village stating that we will upfront that cost. And then when the village is reimbursed, they give the money to us.
Essentially bridge funding to pay the contractor before the grant money comes in. Any questions?
Yeah, and it's full $200,000 that LCDC and the village, everybody has kind of worked together with fronting the rest of it. It's just that $113,000 bill from our PCI.
You pretty much figure it's just going to be a 2 or 3 month turnaround.
I think so. I mean, barring anything crazy, and we have those funds available.
Other comments? Does someone want to make a motion to work through this with the village of Lions Falls? Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, I just wanted to open it up for discussion with this board on just some follow-up debriefing from our IDA and LCDC strategic planning session a couple of weeks ago. I just put together this chart. These are essentially the sticky notes that we came up with the strengths and opportunities where they fell under our strategic plan. And then on the second page was just some next steps that we determined. So just want to open it up to you guys. Do you have any follow-up thoughts on how we move forward with the LCDC? Did you think it was a good session? Is it good that we're aligning with that organization more? Should we not be aligning with that organization more? Just looking for your feedback from that.
The session was good. I helped me to better understand.
Mhm.
I guess in my opinion, it's sort of essential to work with them to make this community fund work.
Yep.
So
Go to the second page, yeah. So some of the next steps that we determined is to align our board meetings. I think that's really a first step that we can take, an easy step to, just work together more with the LCDC. And Cheyenne and I have talked on what would be a good week if we wanted to have the board meetings on the same day or even the same week, because that would be very helpful for staff if we could do that. And we're thinking that we could flip-flop our committee meeting week with our board meeting week. So our board meetings could be held the third week of the month and our committee meetings on the first week of the month. And that would allow us to, get rid of some redundancies. Like, for example, if it's the third week of the month, we can better prepare financial reports, ABO requirements and submission, things like that. It would be a little bit more convenient. Committees, the LCDC is currently updating their bylaws, and I haven't been a part of that conversation this summer, but in my opinion, we should just have the same committees as the IDA with the LCDC. So governance, audit, finance, and project committee. And maybe the project committee is something that we bring in both IDA and LCDC board members on. So if we're talking about Lions Falls Mill site, obviously the IDA has a role in that, but the discussion shouldn't always just come from the LCDC board. So we can merge in that sense. And then we've asked you all via survey a number of times on the time of day that we would like to hold IDA meetings, and looking for your input on that as well, on a time of day that might work best for everyone.
I mean, this has definitely been an ongoing issue for years, and obviously all of us have different sort of commitments between jobs and family and whatnot, but this was kind of a traditional meeting time from the past, and we've made some small efforts to reevaluate, but it's always kind of stuck with the status quo. But as the demographics of the board change, I think it's always helpful to look at this, and you know, we're probably never going to find something that's perfect for everyone, but you know, we value, obviously we want to make this a volunteer position, and it should we should try to make it as convenient or workable as we can for everyone involved. So we don't have to necessarily answer this today, but rather than sending out another survey, it was suggested to just have some more discussion some of the pros and cons and what everyone's schedules were. So if you want to think about, really think about what, probably it's easier to think about what definitely doesn't work for you than what is, the ideal. And if we can start there, then will help us kind of eliminate the worst options. And go from.
Doug, and you sent an email about 8:30 meetings.
8:15, 8:30.
8:15.
I just need first 15 minutes to put the kids in the bus.
Yep.
So if we did a survey and we landed back on 8 o'clock, I guess the question would be, would 8:15 be okay with this, with everybody who's okay with 8 o'clock?
Mhm.
And that's just me being self-serving, but if it has to be 8, then I just have to be 10 minutes late. That's all. I think 8 o'clock is not a bad time. Like this
Right.
time frame is pretty good.
Yeah.
The day's fine, but 8:15 would be very, very helpful for someone like me. I don't know if that helps you, Joe.
Yeah,
With your kids.
I mean, it's the same. We're in the same boat.
All right.
No, and that if we're sticking with a morning meeting, that's fine. I mean, I think the discussion can be wide open to a different time of day too. But I think Gagan and I are in the same boat, Cheyenne and now Brittany, in terms of first thing in the morning. But then we have to respect, we've been trying to be much more efficient with our meeting time and not have them drag on. So, but we just recognizing if we stick with the morning time and we start a little later, it means everyone is delayed a little bit more with getting on with the rest of the day, right? So, which as long as we can continue to have pretty efficient meetings, hopefully, and it's a once a month thing, then hopefully it's okay. But if someone wants to, throw out other ideas for discussion, then that's fine too. And this is really specific to the board meeting. I mean, we have a lot more flexibility with committee meetings in terms of joining remotely and structuring that around what works best with the individual committees. But, you know, the board meetings, we really obviously both value and require in-person attendance for our votes and stuff like that. So it's really this once a month that, you know, we just all have to try to, and I'm not saying that people don't now. I mean, everyone does a really good job of making it work, but it's this one meeting a month, and if we're, you know, continue to try to hold them to an hour to an hour and a half, then, you know, that keep that in mind in terms of how much.
Darlene and Mackenzie, would that, like, if we were to push it to 8:15, would that affect your job?
I'm fine with 8:15. I just wouldn't want it.
Okay. All right, so what we'll,
I don't have any kids, but I have kids. Later would be fine with me.
and Herb,
Yeah, it's fine with me.
okay,
What's a heifer?
A young cow.
it's a
I did not know
teenager cow.
that. I did not know that.
Oh, that's what,
Oh, no, I
this is an
I
egg.
just realized where that word comes from. I did not know
It's all
that.
going
That's
good. Yeah.
Lewis County bingo.
And then, so if we're in agreement on that time, then maybe we can, you know, does anyone have a strong reason that Thursday's not the best day of the week?
And so as far as what week of the month, we'll have to talk with the LCDC and see what works for them. But I think for now, we can make a motion to change our meeting time to 8:15, start time to 8:15, and then if we need to change the,
I mean, and stick with the first week for now until we
Yes.
know from LCDC what
right,
might align.
yep. So we can do our December meeting at 8:15.
And the other thing, just, you probably all know this, but we have to publicly advertise the time of our time and date of our meeting every month in advance. So we need to have this official so that we can send updates to the news media, post it on the website. So for now, if we stick with the first Thursday of the month, but to an 8:15 start.
Yep. And then after we talk to LCDC, we'll propose like a whole new meeting structure with committees and board meetings. So we'll just need a motion for the 8:15 start time.
I'll make.
Second, or any discussion? All in favor? Thank you.
And then this past week, Cheyenne, Jenna, and myself, we started working on our 2022 strategic priorities. And last December, we did a budget workshop where we presented on our strategic plan and our budget. We plan to do that again, but also involve the LCDC and talk about both IDA and LCDC budgets in relation to the plan. So we will intend to schedule a time to do that presentation. You know, maybe it'll be after our board meeting on that first Thursday. We'll figure out what works best for everyone, but just want to let you know that since we're working with the LCDC more, we're going to be involving them more on strategic conversations going forward.
Do you want to just, Cheyenne, can you remind everyone of our fiscal year and how we?
So our fiscal year doesn't end until the end of May. For whatever annoying reason that was established. But 90 days prior to the end of the fiscal year, we need to show the state our budget, we are putting it into your reporting system. with ABO. And so Brittany and I usually start meeting about this time of year, about halfway through our fiscal year to start hashing out that budget with a couple meetings and then final board approval prior to that 90 days. So a week or so to get it.
And we're gonna look into maybe
Yeah, we're gonna
changing our
ask
fiscal
the
year.
Question, how painful it would be to switch to a calendar year fiscal year.
Is it the same for all IDAs?
No, we looked at Jefferson County and theirs is September.
September to August, but actually they are in the process of changing their fiscal year.
Oh, yeah.
So it's doable.
Yeah, we're gonna check with our accountant and our auditor to see what would it entail, and I'm guessing from an auditor perspective, that would be a negative or an increased cost, because I'm sure they do like 1 million audits at the beginning of calendar year, where ours is going to offset right now.
Is that why it's done in the first place?
Might have been when we're really incorporated, we might have been incorporated in May.
Yeah,
or
that's
June, I
true.
mean, could have been as simple as that.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the discussion about like a portal and devices. I've talked with Darlene a little bit about this, and we've all kind of individually researched, how to make our documents a little bit more secure. And really, without giving everyone a brand new email to monitor, and a significant cost associated with that, Jenna has worked to try to secure the Google Drive that she sends to you guys each month with just your email addresses. So that way, we're not giving you like a herb.frost@naturallylewis.com email, which that would be nice, but it's just another email that you have to log into. And I personally am not good at that at all. It just seems like a pain. So we're working to secure this Google Drive a little bit more and create a more comprehensive portal for you guys. So it's not just board documents, it's, program flyers and just bylaws and information on the things that we're doing, so that when you're talking to people and you're in your communities, you can look up the information easily on this drive. Is that okay with everyone? Like, is this system working for you guys? Is it easy to access?
Tom, I got Jane, the request from Jane's email, so you should have access now,
Okay.
but we can work on that if there's more issues.
I'm too cheap to buy a new computer.
Well, and that brings us to our next question. We've, looked into devices. Is anyone in need of some sort of device to use for IDA related meetings? If we were to purchase devices for the board, we would have to come up with some sort of policy to essentially sign them out to you guys. We're more than happy to go ahead and do that. If you guys feel that you need a new device, just let us know and we can do that for you. I know some of you just use your phones and your own laptops.
Quite an undertaking to get, but while I'm in favor of it, I think it's not a bad idea. It's just the policies to regulate the use of it and personal use and whatnot. It's going to be quite a bit
Yeah,
to do. But
yeah,
I think the Google Docs, because you can download the app,
right,
it tells you have the option, and that's pretty much as secure as the device will be.
right.
And it's right on everybody's phones and laptops.
It's a big step in the right direction, just making this secure portal.
Yeah.
So,
And organized, right? Like it's all right
Yeah.
there. So
Okay,
As far as devices go too, there's policies and how to set up the devices, the hospital board has done it for years now, so you can contribute that information. to
I'll get
Jerry.
a template for it. You're saying.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
that's-
they've worked hard on the policies, and the devices themselves, very limited as to what they
Are they laptops?
No, I just don't.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
So if anyone does want to reach out that it would be helpful for you, just let
Yeah.
Brittany know, but I think we'll just handle it on a one-by-one basis if it's a need.
Perfect. And then last on the discussion item, I just wanted to share this infographic with you guys. So the New York State Economic Development Council, which is our state membership, contracted with Moines to do an analysis on IDAs in New York State. I often will send you guys information on like new legislation that's coming down the pipeline or new proposed laws that typically require and recommend more regulation for IDAs and more oversight on what we do. And so the EDC, they advocate for economic development agencies and IDAs at the state level to say, no, we don't need more regulation. It's already very complicated. So Moines did this study on all of the IDAs across New York State. They did surveys and focus groups, and we submitted and were a part of those, and just came up with some metrics that the EDC can use when talking to, senators and, our state legislature on the impact of IDAs. I think the biggest thing that kind of came out of it, there's been this just perception about IDAs and how, all we do is just give bad tax breaks to big corporations that don't need it. And there have been a few bad projects in New York State over the years that have given IDAs a bad name. But I think they really wanted this study to show that IDAs are so much more than that. We are doing full economic development for our communities, and we are the boots on the ground agencies working to grow and build our communities. And, something as simple as us being called industrial development agencies, it's, industrial is a very old school term. So can they recommend to the state that they change their name to EDAs, economic development agencies, just for a, perception issue. So it was a great analysis, great survey results. And they will use this to help advocate for what we do on a state level. Any questions on that? Just thought it was something good to share with you guys.
There's no questions there. We do have a item for executive session in terms of client attorney discussion related to skewed viewing.
Mhm.
Yeah, so at this point, if we had we could have a motion to go into executive session for there.
Motion is to state a reason. I don't know if you stated a reason. Your reason, it's for basically real property contract
Yeah,
negotiations.
sorry. So skewed brewing contract negotiations related to the brewing facility on Trinity Avenue. We had a motion by Darlene. Second by Mackenzie. All in favor? We're now in executive session. So we're out of executive session. No actions are being taken today based on this discussion. More information is needed from the SKU Brewing and the attorneys. So with that, take a motion to close the meeting. Darlene, second. Kenzie, all in favor?
Aye.